After all those years of being a really bad, lost, inept franchise, the Jacksonville Jaguars now find themselves in unfamiliar territory. They won their division last year. They made the playoffs. They won playoff games. They had a double-digit lead on the road in Foxborough against the Patriots, for God's sakes, in the AFC Championship game. They were this close to going to the Super Bowl. The freaking Jacksonville Jaguars. Think about that for a second. They're picking 29th in the draft. It's been a long time since you could say that about the Jaguars. So it's an entirely different location, an entirely different viewpoint or perspective, and a strange place, frankly, for the Jaguars to be in themselves and for me to talk about them in that way. It's really, really weird. And I will say this about their draft strategy. I felt like it was very simple. If they weren't going to go quarterback in round 1, specifically they weren't going to draft Lamar Jackson, which I still feel like that's what they should have done, then you simply had to go best player available strategy on either side of the ball all throughout the entire draft. Because you could look at the Jaguars and say, yes, they have some needs, like every team technically has some needs, because no team has the ability to be perfect. There are always strengths and weaknesses. But this is fundamentally a pretty damn good team with a great defense and an improved offense. And while they have some holes, you feel like they are holes they can address. And this team, if they are able to go best player available and have some good players fall into their lap, could be even scarier come 2018. So I look at what they did in round 1 with Taven Bryan. You say, in theory, the Jaguars didn't have a need there. I agree. The Jaguars could have gotten better players at that pick. Probably. But Taven Bryan made sense based off of the way he could be utilized and deployed in their defense. Another athletic guy with big athletic upside that you feel like long-term could have some impact as an interior edge rusher. At that point, late in round 1, I feel like it's a worthy gamble to take a guy like Taven Bryan because it wasn't a guarantee he was even going to be there. So, I get it. There were better players on the board, and that is for sure. But I do understand the approach. I really, really like them picking DJ Chark, the wide receiver from LSU, in round 2. You lost Allen Robinson in free agency to the Bears. You released Allen Hurns, who ended up going to the Cowboys. How confident are you in a receiving core built around Marquise Lee and Dede Westbrook, and maybe Keenan Cole, as being enough to make enough big plays to where your offense can be good enough to where you can start thinking about the Super Bowl? DJ Chark needs a lot of work. He's terrible catching the ball with his hands. He's primarily a deep threat only. He needs a lot of work. But he's got size, he's got elite speed, and he is a vertical threat. He's got enough tools in the toolbox for you to work with and feel like you can mold him into being a productive receiver. And I will say this, when you look at the recent history of the Jags when it comes to wide receivers, they've been evaluating that position pretty well without having to spend a first-round pick on a guy. So DJ Chark feels like another guy that could potentially fit that mold. What I think most, if not all of us, can agree with is that Ronnie Harrison, the safety from Alabama, late in round 3 was criminal stealing. I know that you saw some reports about he's a bit surly and you have some character concerns, but the dude is a player. He's a damn good player. And I'm assuming eventually he'll be replacing Barry Church and he'll be starting at strong safety for this team. It feels like almost an embarrassment of riches. A team that has Jalen Ramsey, A.J. Boye outside at corner. Now they add Ronnie Harrison at the end of round 3 into the mix, where a guy like Terrell Edmonds went to the Steelers at pick 28 in round 1. Who do you think had the better pick here? I thought that was a massive steal. And again, one of those things, when you just stay true to your board and you just take best player available, you can end up with some really, really damn good players that had no business falling to you, and they go right into your lap. I look at the rest of this class. Will Richardson, he's got some upside. If he can keep his stuff together off the field, he was worth the 4th-round selection because offensive tackle is still a bit of a concern for the team, and maybe Richardson could eventually step into one of those starting spots. Worst-case scenario, he becomes your swing tackle off the bench. Tanner Lee has size and arm strength, but can he play? I don't really think so personally. But you're talking about 6th round, a team without a ton of needs. I'm going to start gambling on guys that have projectable traits. Tanner Lee's size and arm strength do project to the NFL level, so why not gamble on him there? And even like looking at Logan Cooke in round 7, it's much better to draft a punter in round 7 than round 3, isn't it, Jags fans? Yeah, I think so. So I can point to this Jags draft class for an organization that to me was in an entirely unfamiliar and new position for them, drafting late in round 1, and say that the results initially don't look that bad. I don't know how much you're going to get out of Taven Bryan right away, but I don't know that you needed to get that much out of him right away. This is all about 2019, 20, and beyond, and a guy with big-time athletic upside. And if he fulfills it, this pick looks really, really good. DJ Chark, another guy, you're gambling on the athleticism and its projectability. He adds another target in the passing game. He gives you your best vertical threat. Ronnie Harrison, future starter. Will Richardson could potentially be a starter at some point. This was not a bad draft class for the Jaguars. It's not one that you're going to see being talked about as winners. I might have liked this draft a little bit more if they would have went with somebody else other than Taven Bryan in round 1, but it's what they did, and I still feel like they did a decent job. They didn't do anything to hurt themselves, and I feel like they got a couple of guys that will help them in the future, so it was actually nice work by them this time in, again, a new and unfamiliar place in the draft.